Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Gertnablank. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, Blake and I are going to talk about the biggest hot shots and have nots of the last couple of weeks. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend, the premium model and make. It's Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
Buddy, what a creative, beautiful thing you just said to me. You know what? I think we had a suggestion from our Discord that we're going to do a Crossing the Streams anthology of all the stories. I also want to do an anthology of all your beautiful compliments because I'm a very, very insecure person and I need that validation. So thank you very much, Nate. Buddy, we're back. It feels good. Sundays are always they can be a bittersweet day. Obviously, we're looking at our matchups here. And yeah, I got some wins. I got some L's. I don't know, man. It feels pretty good. But how you doing over there with the Apples and Genos? You doing stuff? You putting some dubs on the board or what?
Yes, my players have been putting up some apples and some Genos.
Oh, baby.
I play in 4 leagues, redraft leagues, I should say. And I'm going to clear all 4 matchups this week. So that feels good. First time this year that's happened. Some pretty comfortable wins, actually. I would say, like, any of these, like, I don't know. I wasn't like surprised to win any one of these individual ones, but it always feels good when you bring all 4, when you
Yeah,
just
hell
clean
yeah.
sweep the slate. I think you did that earlier this year, didn't you? We should
I
have talked about it. You have way more leagues. So it's way more impressive if you do it.
I did do it, yeah. I don't like to toot my own horn because, yeah, the very next week I think I lost 6 of 8 leagues or something. So it what goes around comes around. But yeah, it's nothing feels better than that. You and I had a day. We were texting back and forth when
Yeah.
Werenski popped off for 5 points, and
Yeah.
you had Brat going nuts out there. You got a Corpusalo shutout. It was
Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's like when you go to the golf course and you smash a drive like 300 yards dead straight. You're like, I could do that again. I'm coming back like every day. It's like it hooks you, right? And that's
Yeah.
the fantasy hockey allure when you have kind of a day and weeks like you just had here. Hey, Nate.
That's it for sure. I was thinking about that. I was like, this is it right here.
Why
This
we play?
feeling when your teams are just going off. That's the feeling that we chase all year long. So it was one of those weeks for sure. But we're back at it, trying to get prepped for another week here. Not a great streaming week, as we alluded to in the waiver wire show. But definitely there are some levers we can still pull to try to pull ahead of our opponents in our head-to-head matchups this week. Before we get into some hot shots here, we should hit the newsies. First up here, Jim Montgomery, new head coach in St. Louis. Drew Bannister is out after 22 games, third shortest head coaching stint of all time, according to, I think it was Frank Saravalli on Twitter,
Yep.
tweeted it out. Ron Rolston in Buffalo, 20 games in 2013. I honestly didn't remember he was a person who existed, so clearly that registered with me. And Mike Babcock, 0 games with Columbus. Yeah, I think we all know what happened
Ding dong.
there. Yeah, it's an interesting move. Like, it didn't take long for Montgomery to land on his feet, right? 5 days later, and he's got a new head coaching job. And they like came out and said, like, the only reason we made this move is because Jim Montgomery was available. Like, they just were like, oh, we can make an upgrade at the coaching position, and we're going to do so, which is kind of crazy. You don't usually see something like that. St. Louis was like not at the bottom of the league, but they were like the next tier below that, like out of the playoff picture. Not that they couldn't have made a run. Obviously, it's still early in the season, but they weren't in the playoff picture at the moment. 9, 12, and 1. 5v5 stats were not great, but again, not like the absolute bottom of the league. They're not in like the San Jose tier at the bottom of the league, the Chicago tier, Montreal tier down there, but Yeah, a little bit surprising in that regard. I saw an interview with Pavel Buchnevich. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, Blake, but there's an interview with Buchnevich, and he was just kind of sounding off like, "Yeah, we spend all this time playing defense. We got better at playing defense, but now we can't score goals, and you can't win in this league if you're only scoring 1, 2 goals a night."
Right.
And so, yeah, that maybe there is some feeling in the room that they had to figure something else out, figure out how to get the offense going to be able to win. Definitely, that's the way the league has trended overall. You see goaltender save percentages going down across the league. I'm rambling a bit here, Blake, because I just find it pretty interesting when something like this happens. But what's your take on the situation here? Do you think Montgomery instills some life immediately? Do you think it takes a while for the players to get acclimated to a no coach? What's your take?
I think probably both, right? It's going to take a little while, but this guy is a superior coach. There's no question there, right? But I always wonder too when an assistant takes over the head coaching job, like it's almost not enough change. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I I'd rather just see them go a different direction. Like if you don't like what's going on with the team, like clean house. And I mean, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what Drew Bannister was really bringing to the table. But like Doug Armstrong, the GM there, was like, yeah, he's made some mistakes, and like that's the only way you're going to learn. It's like, damn, they're just throwing the man under the bus. I feel for Drew Bannister because he's doing the best he can. It's a hard situation to do what he's trying to do, but yeah, I mean, Montgomery is a superior coach. There's no question there. I think they'll absolutely be better in the long run and probably better this season. So yeah, they gotta put some goals on the board though.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree with that. It does make sense. Like some people might think of like Scott Arniel in Winnipeg, but Winnipeg had a good
That's a
thing
good example.
going and then like continued on with that, right? Whereas obviously in St. Louis it was a different situation where they didn't like the way it was going, but they still promoted the assistant. So interesting parallels there. Maybe it's something worth watching for future situations. Aside from that, we got Seth Jarvis activated from IR, so he'll be playing for Carolina. That's good news for all Seth Jarvis managers. Unfortunately for Carolina, the team, Pyotr Kochikov was injured in overtime, got hit in the head by his own player. Like, it was a bizarre play. I don't know if you saw it, Blake, but
Yeah.
he like just like goes for a random poke check like outside of the blue paint while his players engaged with it was Werenski driving outside, and like it was just like a completely unnecessary play for him to like venture outside and his own players not looking at him, and he looks up and all of a sudden he's running into his own goalie, hits him in the head. Yeah, he looked pretty out of it on the ice. So no update yet, but it could be Spencer Martin season. Are we excited for Spencer Martin season, Blake?
No, I've dubbed him the water boy. All right. The only thing, and he's really good at this, by the way, but he is exactly like Bobby Boucher from the movie Waterboy. Nate, that's before your time, but fill those bottles, Spencer Martin. Don't go out on the ice. What are you doing? Oh my God. That's not a great situation there for Carolina. This guy played in Vancouver as well. Like he's just not good, right? Like I think he needs a very specific goalie environment to succeed. And even though Carolina is a great goalie environment, we've seen Martin give up goals in bunches there with the Hurricanes. So it stinks. Hopefully Kochetkov's not badly injured. Like that, he's that type of goalie too. He's a very aggressive guy. He comes out and does stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not exactly a surprise, but yeah, with Freddie Anderson out 8 to 12 weeks, and now this, like they could be in a little bit of trouble there.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll obviously have to wait and see what the extent of the injury is, but if it does look like he's going to miss some time, I would expect Carolina to make a move and try to add somebody from, yeah, somebody's system somewhere. Somebody's got an extra goaltender that might be worth rostering if they were to come over to Carolina. In the meantime, like, in deeper leagues like 14 team plus, if you need a goaltender who's just going to get you some volume, then perhaps you could look at Martin. I'm definitely not excited about it. He's more in like the Merzlikins kind of tier where you're not entirely sure if it's going to be good or
Yeah.
he's going to
It's like
get blown up.
50-50. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely a bottom tier guy, but potentially a guy who could get some volume here and that has some value in some leagues. Kirill Kaprizov, I'm breathing a sigh of relief for 3 out of 4 of my teams. Got an MRI today, no serious injury considered day to day. Has already shown signs of improvement, it sounds like. So, dodging that one, that could have derailed a lot of my fantasy hockey hopes and dreams this year if that had turned out to be something more. More noteworthy, but yeah, good to see that Kaprizov avoids major issue after that knee on knee hit. Alex Petrangelo, still day to day, is progressing well. It's not a huge relevance for fantasy, but is relevant for Vegas in general. They derive a lot of their play driving from the back end. And so when they don't have their full complement of defensemen, they've also, Nicholas Hague has been out as well, another one of their top four guys there. So they've been missing those guys for sure, although not against Montreal there the other night. Patrick Kane missed practice today. Was quoted as a maintenance day. Apparently, he has been dealing with an upper body injury over the last little bit. And so that's something to monitor, something to take into account. I mean, of course, you assume that it's a case where they're like, yeah, this is probably something that's going to linger on for a while and you can play through it. It's not going to get worse, but it's also not going to get better for a long time. And so it's something he's trying to work through. But yeah, it is tough to get that kind of news where you're like, oh, this might just be something that he's working through for the rest of the season. All right, we made it through the newsies and we can get straight into the hot shots. Blake, let's start with Mikko Rantanen. Tell us about Mikko Rantanen. Tell us about what you think his potential is away from McKinnon. I think this is maybe a misnomer about Rantanen that he's just a byproduct of McKinnon's success. But I think he deserves a little bit of a shout out. We usually like to do this at the top of Hot Shots to shout out an established star player who's doing good stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's it exactly. Like this little hot streak that he's been on, little hot streak. I mean, he's got 11 points in his last 5 games. Damn, it's away from McKinnon. That's crazy. And you know what sucks? I love how we just turn this always into our own fantasy teams. But like, I've got McKinnon in 2 spots, and since Ranto's been off his line, McKinnon's been like chipping away with a danky little assist here or giving me donuts. Like, buddy, please put Rantanen back on with McKinnon. Like, obviously, this is like a yin to McKinnon's yang. These guys are really, really elite players, and it's neat to see him flourishing in this environment, right? Like, he's on a 125-point pace. Damn. That's just the embarrassment of riches they have there in Colorado. Like, they got the best defensemen in the league, and they got 2 of the best forwards in the entire league. So it's exciting stuff. I mean, what else can you say about Ranto? This guy's got 14 goals in 21 games. He's on fire right now. He's in the prime of his life. It's just awesome to be a Rantanen owner right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, that was really the point I wanted to make there, is just that Rantanen is a guy who can totally get it done away from McKinnon. Well worth the mid first round pick you had to spend on him this year. On the season now, pacing for 55 goals, 125 points. And the on ice shooting percentage is probably high. The shooting percentage is high, but only a 65% IPP there. So, like, I don't know. It might not be that far off this mark that we might expect him to go. Again, 22 plus minutes average time on ice on the season. Like, gotta love Jared Bednar for what he does for his
He's
star
incredible.
players.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Mitch Marner is an interesting one. Usually don't go with 2 kind of superstar top 2 round picks in this segment here, but I think it's worth getting a little bit more insight on Mitch Marner here. He's got 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points his last 5. Obviously, all this while Matthews has been away from the team, seeking help overseas randomly. Pops up in Germany. We find out he's over there. There were a lot of memes on Leafs Twitter about how he was over there trying to find a good hair transplant surgery to replace his balding. That was a good time on Twitter that day, but
You can do both. You can do both things. Like, you're in Germany, like, definitely just check it out, right? I mean, deal with that windshield, right? And I can relate. I mean, I've got the same thing going on here, Austin. So there you go.
Yeah, it's definitely funny, and it's only funny because the Leafs have actually been pretty good in Matthews' absence. They always seem to do this whenever a star guy goes down. The other players are like, "Oh, I got to play now," and they tend to band together and do it. Interesting stat lines for Marner. So the individual numbers are never like fantastic with Marner. They never really have been. He had one season where he kind of cranked it up a bit, and then generally over the rest of his career, he's been more of a pass player. I think this is pretty well known about Mitch Marner, as he's a pass first guy. 199th shots per 60, 172nd individual scoring chances for per 60 over the last 5, but up at 27th in on ice scoring chances for per 60. So he's clearly generating a lot of chances there. Over 21 and a half minutes time on ice. Now pacing for 31 31 goals, 109 points. Rest of season, so two things, I guess, Blake. When Matthews is back, do you expect Marner can keep up this 109-point season pace? I mean, obviously, the last little bit has been exceptional, but do you think that we should expect to see continued excellence from Marner more at this level? Or do you think that he'll let off the gas again and maybe this is a time to even consider trading him away if you can get a pretty penny for him?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I definitely would not be trying to trade Mitch Marner. I think like this is a guy that you identified early in the preseason as a 100-point player, and he hasn't done it yet, but he's come as close as you can get to getting 100 points. I
Yeah.
still think he is a 100-point player, but the real difference here with what Mitch Marner has been able to do is his performance on the power play. With Matthews off that power play, Mitch Marner is a priority. He's a shooter on the power play. Like this, his numbers, I'm just digging in here on natural stat trick. Like in 21 games, his IPP is 85%, where like the second highest IPP he's ever had was 75%. So he's all over the ice. He's in on everything. His shots on goal per 60 up by one whole shot on the power play. He's chucking pucks. He's getting scoring chances. And his on ice shooting percentage is still in line with his regular numbers. So to me, it's the power play where Mitch Marner is really cooking. I think that will when Austin Matthews comes back, like, yeah, you got the best shooter in the league. You're going to have to change your power play up, but I wonder how much they will change it up. Like you tell me, like what you're seeing over there with the Leafs power play, because obviously we know what it was doing when Matthews was there. And, I think we can, maybe extrapolate that he was dealing with an injury and he wasn't fully himself. Like we know the Leafs power play is good, but with him out of the lineup, it's Willie Nylander and it's Mitch Marner getting the biz. So yeah, I think there will be a slight regression, but I still value Mitch Marner as a 100-point player. What do you think happens when Austin Matthews comes back, especially on the power play?
Yeah, on the power play, I think they'll probably, unfortunately, start deferring to Matthews a bit more again. Nylander is the one other guy who like feels willing to like take his own shots and trust his own
Mhm.
shot to be
Yep.
worth it. Um, Marner is obviously at his best when he's creating with his feet and with his stick handling and like getting into like beating one guy on the penalty kill, making him think he's going to pass and then making a move to the inside and opening up some ice or something like that. And
Yeah.
so he's been a bit more of that, but also less risky. It feels really weird, the dynamic early in the season between him and Matthews specifically on the power play. And so I am kind of optimistic because Marner is a bit of a streaky player from time to time. Does feel a little bit like Elias Pettersson, who we've talked about, like a guy who maybe gets in his own head a little bit too much at times and starts to believe things about himself that aren't true, maybe.
Sure.
Um, so I think that it is a good sign for him to get on a hot streak like this early in the season and start to trust himself a bit more. And so maybe that spills over a little bit. I'm with you. I'm not really looking to move off him. The underlying metrics look like if you just go by the luck metrics, they look pretty sustainable. 80% IPP, under 15% shooting percentage, 12.8% on ice shooting percentage. That's resulting in a 109-point pace at the moment. I think that that's could be about where he sustains this thing for the rest of the season, obviously assuming health. And so I'm in a spot where it could get a little bit worse when Matthews comes back, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but obviously he's been so good here that you kind of got to hope, at least, if not believe, you got to hope that this is just creating some confidence for him that he can carry through the rest of the season.
Yeah. One last thing on Marner, buddy, before we move on there. You know who else has been playing well is JT. John
Mm-hmm.
Tavares, like, he had a monster game tonight here too, like big time shots, all kinds of periffs. Like, I just think, yeah, they've really kind of created a different identity without Matthews there, and it'll be interesting when he comes back.
I actually looked this up because I was looking at the pregame lines and I was like, man, this team, like, there's nobody here. And literally half of the forward lines for the Leafs in the game tonight did not start, were not on the opening night roster. And like a bunch of them were like Lawrence and Robertson, who were Holmberg was on the opening night roster. Like, yeah, there's 6 AHL guys on this roster, and it's really Marner, Nylander, and JT that are getting it done. So, yeah, kudos to them. It's obviously a good sign if you roster any of those guys that these guys have that in the bag, even if it doesn't always, manifest itself in any given, 5 game, 10 game stretch throughout the season. All right, moving along, we got Anthony Cirelli, 6 goals, 8 points in his last 5, over 22 minutes average time on ice, and the underlying metrics here look hot. 64 shots per 60, 32nd individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 62nd on ice Corsi 4 per 60, and 35th on ice scoring chances 4 per 60. Now on pace for 91 points. Anthony Cirelli, tell me you saw this coming, Blake.
Well, I streamed him in. You know what? And I streamed in Cirelli before this hot streak on one of my leagues.
Nice.
Just because I had injuries. I'm like, you know what? I can get him into those busy night games. Yeah, I'll take a ride on Cirelli. He was getting power play 1 at that point, or he was moonlighting there. He's not anymore, but I did not expect this. No, Cirelli's a guy that he's relied on for his responsible two-way play. Like, he's a great two-way center. He's the second line center usually, but he's more of a facilitator. He's not a guy that's expected for this kind of offense. So it is pretty damn shocking to see that his metrics are cooking right now. Like 32nd overall in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. What? That's not. I didn't see that on the bingo card here coming up on this Hot Shots and Have Nots episode. So I'm not putting a lot of stock into it, to be honest. But it's great to see. I still think Cirelli's. I mean, is he a streamer level, or is he above the streamer level? That's a good question. I still think he's kind of a schedule play. Like, I dropped him. Like, I picked him up and I missed out on the last 2 games here. I think I got 4 of his points, and then I missed the 2-point games with Cirelli because I dropped him. But I think he could just as easily go ice cold. And these numbers are bolstered by an 8-shot game against Dallas there on the 23rd. Yep. So keep that in mind. But Tampa is playing pretty well. This guy's line right now, he's currently playing with Brandon the Bagel Hagel and Mitchell Chaffee. Huh? What we like Hagel over here. So I'm a big fan of Hagel. I always have been. He's just a responsible player that's going to get a ton of minutes. He's going to be out there in the last minutes of games, so there's going to be some points there. And yeah, he can get on that power play at times. So definitely an excellent streamer for Tampa. I wouldn't expect this to continue. I mean, he's shooting 35% in the last 5 games, 19% on ice shooting percentage. Anthony, what do you do? Cirelli, Cinderelli. Oh, God, this guy's nuts. But I'm happy for it. I'm glad. If you streamed in Anthony Cirelli, kudos to you.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. It's good to see the underlying stats come up here for this 5-game stretch. Obviously, part of that with Braden Point out of the lineup. Mm-hmm. But worth noting, like, he still did get 22.50 in that game against Dallas, where he popped off for the 8 shots, a couple goals. So it's not like that's the only reason he's been getting more minutes or anything like that. It does seem like a bit of a conscious effort. So I do think, like, we could maybe bump up his preseason projection at this point now that he's getting more minutes. I mean, there's still obviously a chance that those minutes go back down again at some point. Overall, I think it's good news for Anthony Cirelli, but I would roster him while he's hot, but I would also not be worried about dropping him when he invariably goes cold again. Next up, Mikael Granlund. He's got 2 goals, 6 points in his last 5, 20 minutes a night there. The individual numbers never look good with Granlund. He's 320th in shots per 60, 336 in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, but the on-ice numbers are not too bad. 88th Corsi, 4 per 60, 84th on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60, on pace for 32 goals and 85 points on the season. Earlier, he was shooting a bit more on the season. He's 80th in shots per 60. 77% IPP, 12.9% shooting percentage, and 10.7% on ice shooting percentage. Even if you think the IPP is a little bit hot there might be a player here, Blake.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a must roster player. To be honest, like, how can we not be rostering this guy? I streamed him in a couple spots early on because I'm like, yeah, we know what he did last season. Like, he got these kind of minutes last season as well with San Jose. Like, he averaged just under 21 minutes. Well, this year he's averaging 21-16, and he's actually converting. His shooting percentage has gone up. His shots on goal have gone way up. Like, that's something that we don't normally expect from Mikael Granlund. So I just think at this point we gotta kind of ride the hot hand, and that's what he's doing. And he's on a good line there in San Jose. Like, I remember our episode where we were talking about our projections, and San Jose and Seattle and Utah. Like, there were some fun teams, and I was low key into San Jose, like because of guys like William Eklund, because of Tyler Toffoli, who's a big time shooter that we like, even Fabian Zetterlund, obviously Macklin Celebrini. There's some pieces there, and Granlund is the guy. He's the headmaster. He's the guy kind of driving the ship. It looks like to me out there, and yeah, line one, power play one, point per game projection. I think you got to roster this guy until further notice.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's worth noting that he did miss practice today. It sounds like it was most likely a maintenance day, but there was no confirmation of that. So do be aware of that. But I think, yeah, if you got Granlund, you're holding on to him right now. I will say, like, the fact that the shots have dropped off here pretty significantly in the last few games might just be the sign that the early season shot pace was not super sustainable for this player. And so that could come down, and that'll obviously have some negative effect. But yeah, I don't think anybody was expecting him to pace for 85 points through 23 games of the season. So if it does come down a little, it could still be exceeding expectations at this point. So yeah, Mikael Granlund, one of the better early surprises this year, and not a player that I see, yeah, it really tailing off to the point where like he can't be rostered at any point this year. So definitely a good look there. There's always these pockets of value on these bad teams. You just have to find the right players. Moving over to Columbus, we got a trio of players here that we have to mention. We have Sean Monahan, Dmitry Voronkov, and Zach Werenski. Monahan has just 1 goal, but 9 points in his last 5 games. Voronkov has 4 goals, 6 points in his last 5. And Werenski, fresh off that 5 point night there on Thursday that we mentioned, 3 goals, 10 points in his last 5 games here. I'll let you take it wherever you want from here, Blake. But the one thing that I really wanted to highlight first off here is Dmitry Voronkov averaging 15 and a half minutes time on ice over these 5 games, 6th in the league individual scoring chances for per 60.
Damn. Yeah, I actually didn't know that about Voronkov. I saw someone pick them up in one of my leagues. I was like, Voronkov? Okay. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Like this was a player of interest last year for sure. And I love that he's sort of kind of doing it again. Columbus has some real pieces here that are doing stuff, and led by Voronkov in terms of the metrics. Anyway, I love that. But to me, Sean Monahan is such a fun story this year. Obviously, we know what happened in the offseason there, and this guy has a bee in his bonnet this year. He's really playing for something, and he's obviously healthy for the first time in a long, long time. This is a guy he's gotten 82 points in the league before. He's not an old man. He's 30. Right. It's just the injuries have taken their toll on Monahan over the years. I think landing in Montreal and getting a shot at kind of a top center, top 6 center there, putting up 59 points is great. I think he's going to smash that this year. This kind of just goes to show when you get a player that has good acumen, he's been a good player in the past, and you just feed him a bunch of minutes and feed him a bunch of give him a bunch of responsibility. Monahan is really shining, and he's playing for. Obviously, he's got some things he's playing for here, but I'm just a big fan of that player. I think we're starting to come close to like must roster player territory with Monahan and what he's doing. I still think we're not quite there, but I mean, it's 20 games in, he has 20 points. That's pretty damn nice, and he's been really hot as of late. 9 points in his last 5. What the hell? Oh my God, Sean Monahan. I love to see it. Who's he playing with right now? I'm trying to think. Yeah, he's out there with Voronkov and Marchenko. Damn. Yeah. Okay, 2 killers, right? Marchenko is going off in his own right. Like, I'm a fan of Monahan. I've talked about him. I know I've mentioned his name here over the last couple of weeks, and I haven't been able to get him anywhere. But I do think that's a player that can probably put up like a 65-point season pretty easily with this team as long as he stays healthy. So I'm excited about Monahan to some degree there. Voronkov, sure. I still think he's a streamer, but I love those metrics. So if he's getting any more minutes, if he gets, he's getting power play 1 currently right now, which is a really
last game,
nice place
1801.
I love that. So that's a player of interest for me. I might need to see maybe one more game, and you might not have any more time after that to go pick this player up, right? So definitely keep an eye on Voronkov there. And then what can you say about Zach Werenski? Like, I'll let you kind of wax poetic on him, but this guy, we've been talking about him for a couple of years now, and there always seems to be something, especially in Columbus, that is just going off the rails. It's a very hard luck team, as we know, right? But Werenski is healthy, knock on wood, and he's just doing the thing. This guy just played 32 minutes the other night. He's a machine. This guy on any other team, we're talking about one of the best defensemen in the league, right? But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, he plays for Columbus and he's going way under the radar. But I mean, talk to me about your love affair with Werenski and how stoked you are on what this player's doing right now.
Yeah, it's been well documented. I've been big on Werenski for years at this point. Yeah, 10 points in the last 5 games here, nearly 27 minutes a night in that stretch. 10th in shots per 60, 46th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 42nd Corsi, 4 per 60. Those are actually bad relative to his
Yeah.
season long numbers. On the season, second amongst all defensemen in shots per 60 and sixth in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. And that's while averaging 26 minutes a night. Yeah, I don't know what much more I can really say about Werenski that I haven't said before, but now pacing for a point per game and 25 goals. It's a player that I've loved the underlying numbers on for quite some time. Feels good that he's paying off in the early going. I hope he keeps it up the whole season long. Honestly, like 10.5% on ice shooting percentage, 7.9% shooting percentage, those don't feel problematic to me. The 63% IPP will come down, but it wouldn't be shocking to see him keep a 50+% IPP and be one of the higher defensemen in the league along along the IPP route. So I think he is one of those elite defensemen, and he's being leaned on, and he's flourishing in Dean Evason's system there. And yeah, we talked about it in the offseason. You can go back and listen to some of our takes. You can look in the Apples and Junes guide if you purchase that. We were on this that Dean Evason could really create something here and give this team a lot of stability, and that might be all they need to have some of these offensively talented players really take the next step. Over the last couple of weeks here, the Columbus Blue Jackets are third in the league in both Corsi 4 per 60 and scoring chances 4 per 60 at 5v5. They're absolutely crushing it under Dean Evason. And so I think that's worth noting as well, that this is not your father's Columbus Blue Jackets. Like this is a new team this year, a new look team under Dean Evason, and you have to treat it as such until further notice. All right, last up on the hot shots, we have Olen Zellweger, another player that I've been on lately. 2 goals, 5 points in his last 20 minutes a night. 40th in shots per 60, 62nd individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. On ice numbers are really solid here. 26th in Corsi, 4 per 60, 15th in on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Not numbers you typically associate with an Anaheim defenseman. On the season, his numbers look even better than that, especially the individual numbers. What do you think about Zellweger at this point? Is he becoming a player that you're just going to hold until further notice, or are you still considering him just kind of a guy that you pick up and then cast back?
Yeah, he's trending that way as a hold to me. Like I've got him in 3 spots and I have no reason to get off of him. Although he's a young player, right? He's only 21. He's also on Anaheim. He's in the Greg Cronin hellscape, right, Nate? So, who the hell knows what's going to happen, right? They could sit him down, give him a healthy scratch, and let Jackson Lacombe go out there on power play 1 and just crush 25 minutes a night. I don't know. But from what I see right now, this guy's definitely a hold. If you have him, you're holding him. Anaheim has an amazing amount of off nights, right? Like that's well documented like throughout the season. So you've got the power play 1 quarterback, at least, currently. And he's been that for quite some time now. So I feel pretty good about that. And also Anaheim, some of their underperforming players are starting to perform a little bit now. Guys like Cutter Gauthier, guys like Trevor Zegras, right? Ryan Strome, even there's guys that are starting to put some points on the board, and Anaheim is not that bad. I mean, they're a bad team, but their record isn't that bad, right? They're putting some wins on the board. They're getting some goals. So, yeah, I like the player a lot. Also passes the eye test. I know you love that, Nate, but this guy is slick as hell out there. Like he gives me shades of Lane Hudson, like with that just kind of flashiness. You know what I mean? But obviously he has a little bit better defensive acumen because he's getting better minutes, and obviously Greg Cronin trusts him a little bit more to get him up around 20 minutes a night. So yeah, long story short, I'm liking Olen Zellweger. This guy's an offensive defenseman, power play 1 quarterback. I think he's a hold until further notice.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting. I think we mentioned this once before, but they have been leaning on the top power play unit just a little bit more over the last 3 games. 58% power play share for the top unit versus the second. So they have been prioritizing Zellweger's unit a little bit more, and that obviously raises his floor a little bit as well from where we would typically expect to see any kind of relevance from a Anaheim defenseman. So I like that about Zellweger. I love the underlying metrics. It's young in the season for sure, but this is a guy who legitimately was one of the best offensive prospects of a defenseman that we've seen come out of the junior leagues that he was in, and also producing at the AHL level. Like, this is a guy with some pedigree behind him, and so that's given me more hope than just the metrics so far in this young season that this guy is actually for real, and we might actually get some sustained fantasy relevance as soon as this year.
Zellweger's unit.
Right.
Sorry about that.
On that
It,
note, let's move over to the Patreon plug, shall we? The $2 a month tier, the supporter tier, gets you access to patron only live shows. Yeah, there will be one coming up probably the second week in December. I'll be putting out another one of those. If you got any suggestions for that, any topics you want me to cover, I haven't nailed that down yet. I've got a few ideas rattling around the old noggin, but I haven't nailed that one down yet. So if you got any ideas on what you'd like to hear me talk about and you are a patron supporter, then you could definitely send me those. I'd be interested to hear what the people want to hear about. Apple's tier, $8 a month, gets you access to those patron only live shows, also access to patron only Discord channels, and also will get you the show notes for the shows such as this one right now. Gets you the Apples and Geos player evaluation tool, which is what Blake and I are looking at right now as we're talking through the metrics on these players and trying to make decisions and for our teams and to give you advice on how these players might perform moving forward. If you're a true degenerate, the Genos tier exists for you specifically. $15 a month gets you all the previous perks mentioned, plus I'll personally answer every single one of your questions. Guaranteed. Blake, it's now time for some hot shots.
oh,
No.
yeah, let's get to biz. No, you ruined it. It's the have-nots, Nate. Oh, God. These guys are the opposite of hot shots, all right? There you go.
I'd like to say that I was trying to mess with you, but that was actually just a
I was
complete
ready. I
flub on
had
my part.
something locked and loaded. You just threw me, Nate. That's fine.
Just lobbed the grenade in there and walked away. So first up on the list, Patrick Kane, who we mentioned came out today. He has been dealing with some sort of upper body injury, so that probably explains a fair bit of what we've been seeing here. Just over 60 and a half minutes average time on ice, 146 shots per 60, down at 307th individual scoring chances for per 60. It's been a tough year so far for Kane for sure, just on a 12 goal, 41 point pace. And yeah, you have to wonder how much of that is tied to the injury, when it occurred, what might be going on there, and how long it might stick around. What's your temperature on Kane? I've been getting the drop questions. I'm sure you have as well, Blake,
Yep.
on Patrick Kane. When would you start to feel comfortable in dropping him?
Right away. I don't know.
Okay.
Like I'm not. To me, like you were definitely higher on Kane than I was going into the year, but this injury stuff makes sense, right? Like if he's injured, there's a reason why he's putting up a 41 point pace after pacing for 77 points last year. He's not a 41 point pace player. This guy should be in and around 70 points, right? And I think that's what you projected him for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's possibly dealing with an injury, and who knows? Like he's a 36-year-old man that could last throughout the season, right? And Detroit has been playing an interesting brand of hockey under Derek Lalonde, right? Which is just, just hope for the best. Don't shoot at all and just hope for the best. Hope it goes in and rely on Cam Talbot and Alex Lyon to bail you out of games. But that's kind of what they're doing. So yeah, that said too, like Kane is underperforming. There's no question. Like he's a chucker. He always kind of has been, but now he's not really even shooting very much. And he's never been an efficient player, and that inefficiency still exists. So it's hard to say, right? Like no one's really going on the wings currently. I mean, you got Larkin and my boy Lucas Raymond, but I mean, it's just not a guy that I'm currently excited about. And until I want to see what happens with this health stuff, like I think. I don't know what this is a weird one. Like I feel like he could be a drop. I wouldn't be excited about keeping him on my team. I've dropped players like DeBrincat before, and he's kind of in that same tier to me. What's your temperature with Patrick Kane, and how long are you holding through this kind of cold spell that he's on?
Yeah, I think in 12-team leagues, I'd be okay to drop him if you've got an option on the wire that you're much more interested in. This might be a week where you're probably benching people anyway, so maybe it doesn't hurt you to just keep them through this week. If you've got other
Yeah.
players that you want to drop, maybe you're just, streaming goalies every night anyway for this whole week and you're not really worried about who you're benching this week. That could be the case, and you might just want to hold him for 4 more games, let him sit on the bench and see if he turns things around, if things start to trend better for him. That could be a route to go as well. I do think that I don't think like I was super far off on my preseason projection. I did have him for 27 goals, 74 points. I don't think that was wrong as a baseline
Right.
expectation, but I do think that this injury makes a lot of sense based on the sharp decline in the underlying metrics here. It all kind of lines up to some extent here. So if you are concerned about that, I wouldn't blame you. It sounds like it's not something that's likely to go away immediately, and so I think you would be justified in making a move there. That being said, like who are you making that move for? This is a guy on a top power play unit that's actually been pretty good overall on the season. It's more been at 5v5 that Detroit has been spinning its wheels a bit, and so yeah, you have to weigh who you're actually getting here. Maybe there's somebody exciting out there like Voronkov. Blake, would you make that move for Voronkov and just see if
Oof.
Voronkov can hold this deployment? He's been very hot under the hood. Got up to 18 minutes in the last game. Is he building something there on the top line? Is that a move you'd make, or would you be holding out for a higher tier player?
No, I think I'd be holding Kane there. That's a safer commodity to me. I mean, if it was desperate, if I was like trying to make the playoffs and it's week, 20 or whatever, and it's like,
Sure.
win to get in, like, yeah, bounce Kane, no question. Take a shot on Voronkov. But I need to see a little bit more from Voronkov there on Columbus, because he can just as easily go down to like an 11-minute player.
Right.
So yeah, whereas Kane, I mean, we know what this guy's going to do, and they're not going to bounce him off power play one. And even if they do, he's still good enough to do stuff on power play two. So no, I think I'd need a higher caliber player for Patrick Kane if I'm dropping him there.
All right. Next up, Alex Laferriere, one of the favorites of the early season, now has 0 points in his last 5 games here, 60.5 minutes a night. 178th shots per 60, 144th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, around those marks in the on ice numbers as well. Yeah, the early season shine has worn off a little bit here for Laferriere. Talk to me about Laferriere, Blake. Currently on a line with Quentin Byfield and Warren Fogle, still maintaining a spot on that top power play, which has now hit that 3 game mark with the 5 forward power play. This is something
Yeah,
that
crazy.
I was vocal about. I didn't think it would last, but so far it has through 3 games. Got a goal there the other night, so probably lasts at least 1 more game here. What are your thoughts on Laferriere here, and would you be willing to move off him at this point?
Yeah, for me, he's a soft hold. I think you got a guy on power play one, and access to Quentin Byfield at even strength. Byfield and Warren Fogle, that's their line. But I mean, there's some red flags. Obviously, first off, the lack of production that stinks, and then secondly, his last game he only played 12 minutes, right, or 12 minutes 48 seconds. I hate to see that, right? But I mean, still power play one. But it's a young guy that he's going to have ups and downs in the season, and it's certainly not a must hold player, but while he's on power play one, I think it's still a soft hold. Again, it you could drop him, sure, but who's going to be the ad, right? Are you going to get another guy who's on power play one, or a guy maybe like Anthony Cirelli who's playing 20 minutes a night? Like, I'd take Cirelli over Laferriere, no question. But that power play one, that's a really key piece. And obviously we've seen proof of concept with this player as well. Maybe he's just streaky. But I mean, he's still doing some stuff as well. Like I think you mentioned, like he's 46 overall in individual Corsi 4 per 60. He's chucking pucks, so that's nice. He's not hitting the net. I don't know. I'd give him a little bit more time, I think. But yeah, if you need to get off of Ferrier, you can. He does hit as well, so he's got a good peripheral floor there. But yeah, it's a young player, going to be a streaky player. I don't know. What are you doing with him?
Yeah, I think I'd be willing to move off of him. I in one league, which I feel like I can be a little bit more free with my moves. I've already moved off him because he was going to be benched, and obviously wasn't any point to keeping him if I was just going to bench him anyway.
Yep.
So I have moved off him in one spot already, and fortunately avoided the worst of this cold streak here. Yeah, I'm not super beholden to Laferriere. I do think he'll have another stretch, assuming the power play one deployment does hold. I think he'll have another stretch where he pops off again for a bit. But I think you're right on. I think this could be a streaky player here and there. Kings are still feels like searching for the best version of their top nine, which they play fairly evenly. And until we kind of settle that down a little bit and they start to have some results that they like, I still think you're going to have some pretty big ups and downs throughout the season. All right, next up, friend of the show, Vinny Tro. Just one goal, unfortunately, in his last five here. 20 and a half minutes average time on ice. 155th shots per 60, 295th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 94th in both Corsi 4 per 60 and scoring chances 4 per 60. Now on pace for just 43 points on the season. What is going on here, Blake? And should we expect these things to turn around soon?
I don't know. The Rangers are weird this year. I read somewhere, and I'm going to butcher this. I'm paraphrasing, but Peter Laviolette coach teams, they always come out hot. Like their offense is really good that first year, and obviously the Rangers were just destroying people last year. And yeah, it's the shine is off that for sure. They're having some kind of tough times there. But yeah, Vinny Tro, say it ain't so, my man. This stinks. I'm always going to love Vincent Trocheck because of his deployment, and pretty much every coach he's ever had has absolute confidence in this man in the last minute in games. He's getting out there for big minutes, no problem. But yeah, there's some things that I hate here. Like, yeah, the metrics are stinky. First off, 43-point pace. Jeez, it's the IPP. Like that's the thing that just fell off a cliff at 5-on-5. His IPP right now is 33%. Last year, for reference, it was 60. Right, he's at 33. Okay, so I think there's some luck involved there as well. Plus, they've been kind of dinking around with the lines. So right now, Trocheck's playing. He's back with Panarin and Lafreniere, but there was times where he wasn't playing on that line.
Yeah.
So yeah, when they're throwing the lines in a blender, yeah, things there are some casualties, right? And I think Trocheck's production has kind of been part of that, right? And then you look at he hasn't been able to do as much on the power play as well. Only 5 power play points in 19 games. That's sort of like he had 24 last year, including 11 goals, where he was a big kind of piece of that power play in the bumper position. And again, it really hasn't been going that way. His shots are way down on the power play. His shooting percentage is down on the power play. His scoring chances are way down on the power play. So yeah, it's hard to say. Like, I'm not getting off him. Like, I think Trocheck is a potential buy low, but I don't know how much more he has. Like, I don't think he's a 43-point player, but he's not going to be a 77-point player like he was last year. I think we're probably looking at 55 to 60-point Trocheck this year. And that's if they kind of get their crap together and he starts cooking a little bit. So that said too, great per riffs. Obviously this guy in a banger league, he's not really hurting you because again, hits and blocks with the best of them. He's really good at that. But yeah, it's concerning for sure what's going on there in New York.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic on Trocheck, but yeah, this is. I honestly forget the exact context who the player I was comparing him to was, but somebody asked me to compare Trocheck to another player who is ranked similarly in the preseason, and I went with the other player, and the reasoning I gave was that Trocheck is a little bit more dependent on his line mates than that other player was, and I wish I could remember who it was because that would make this story a lot more interesting for everybody
We'll
listening.
edit it in post. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll edit it in post. But yeah, so I think that is a bit of the problem with Trocheck is that he's a good player, but he's not like a great player in his own right for fantasy purposes at least. So that being said, like the 38% IPP is ridiculous. That's definitely going to go up by like 20%. If you add half as many points again to his total, suddenly he's a 64-point player roughly, and you're probably not even thinking about talking about him in this way. So yeah, I think a fair chunk of what we've seen so far this year has just been bad luck. The biggest concern for me with Trocheck at the moment is the fact that they have tried messing with the lines so far this year, and that's a real possibility is the biggest concern for me with Trocheck. But overall, to be quite honest, I think I would at this point be willing to throw out some trade offers for Trocheck and see if I could snipe him in a few spots because I do think that there are better days ahead. Next up, I want to do a little compare and contrast with these two players, Rickard Rakell, Troy Terry. In similar spots, they've both got 1 goal and no assists in their last 5 games here. Both are playing top line, top power play minutes. Rickard Rakell, obviously, alongside Sidney Crosby. That's the best teammate either of these two guys have to play with by far. Rakell, 53rd in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 32nd on ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 28th on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60, while playing almost 20 minutes a night. So the underlying metrics look pretty good for Rickard Rakell, but it's been a long time that we've known that Rickard Rakell is not necessarily one of the most efficient players on the face
Right.
of planet Earth. Whereas Terry, the underlying metrics not nearly as good, 240th shots per 60, 233rd individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, but we might believe a little bit more in Terry's ability to be efficient regardless of the lack of line mates and everything else around him. He's a little bit more able to create on his own. So between the two, I'll make you pick one guy for the rest of the season, Blake, and defend yourself here.
Oh God, rest of season? Okay, well, rest of season would be Troy Terry because I feel like he's not going to get bounced off power play one, or if he does, there's a good chance he gets it back. Whereas Rakell, yeah, we've seen that proof of concept as well. It's like, okay, Rakell, you're off power play one. Now we're going to throw Letang up there. We're going to do a 2 defenseman setup or whatever, you know. But I mean, right now, I would take Rakell over Terry for me because yeah, he has access to Crosby. Obviously, we know the Penguins are playing terribly right now, and it's not a good vibe there, but it's not a good vibe in Anaheim either. You know, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of a better vibe, but Pittsburgh has a higher ceiling. They have a much higher ceiling for points for fantasy. So I think I'd rather be on Rakell. Plus, he hits, right? That's like he shoots better, he hits better. There's some safety there in Rakell, but if I just don't trust the deployment all year. We've seen that where, you know, Rust and Rakell kind of eat into each other's minutes. You know, we got the bunt kick over there, Michael Bunting. Like, what are they going to do with him? Maybe he takes some time off of Rakell. I don't know. So, yeah, that's sort of my take there. It sucks though. Troy Terry, like he really cooked that 1 year where he was on a couple years where he had a 70-point pace. And I think I sort of expected it. And it's just, the way that Anaheim is constructed, like they have so many guys, like young, good players that need minutes. And it's like anybody's game from night to night. It reminds me of Dallas a little bit. It's like, oh, the Troy Terry line's not going. Like, all right, let's throw out like whoever else, right? Like it's just, I don't feel good about just the way they're deploying, the way that Greg Cronin is deploying his lines there. So that's a little bit frustrating. I think right now I'd take Rakell. What say you, Nate?
Um, Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily like a definitive answer to this question at this moment, but I think for myself personally, I would take Terry. I think it's a much more skilled player
Yeah,
overall,
clearly.
and generally, I want to bet on talent, even in um, situations, where he is kind of the best guy, and so he's got to do it himself, and he can't really afford to go through cold stretches himself and get buoyed by his teammates because his teammates are not going to do that. That being said, like if you just look at the team stats, 585 score and venue adjusted on natural stat trick over the last couple of months, Anaheim shows up at sixth in Corsi 4 per 60 and eighth in scoring. Or sorry, I got that backwards. Sixth in scoring chances 4 per 60, eighth in Corsi 4 per 60, whereas the Pens are down at 20th in both of those spots. I think it's worth noting, like I don't understand how Mike Sullivan has not been fired yet, but
Yeah.
like it's coming, like it's gonna
Yeah.
happen, um, unless something drastically changes in the next like few days. So, uh, yeah,
Drew
and who
Bannister.
knows?
He's looking for a
Yeah, Drew
job. Yeah. There you
Bannister.
go.
Maybe 5 days on the market for Drew Bannister, and he gets a new job. The same way Jim Montgomery got snapped up. But regardless of all that, like that means changes for Pittsburgh. And right now, Raquel is in the absolute best situation that he possibly could be, and he's still not producing. The underlying metrics do look good, but we've seen those go away with Raquel in the past before as well. So I think I'm just going to bet on the talent of Terry and the fact that it does seem like Cronin has prioritized him just a little bit more this year. He's hovering around the 18-minute average time on ice mark on the year and in the last 5 games here. So I'm a little bit more excited about that. Not excited is the wrong word, but a little bit happier about that than I have been in years past. I do think that the 8.5% on ice shooting percentage could bump up a little bit here, and you could be talking about Terry as a 60 plus point pace player rest of season fairly easily still. So that's my take there, and I'll stick to that one. Moving over, I want to talk about Pavel Dorofiev. He was a hot player, we talked about a lot here. Underlying metrics were amazing. Cooled off a bit here, so he's got just one goal in his last 5 games, 17 and a half minutes average time on ice, 100th in shots per 60, 82nd individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Those are still good numbers there. Maybe not great numbers, but good numbers. 116th Corsi, 4 per 60, 22nd on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. So that's a really nice number there for Dorofiev. Tell me what you're thinking about Dorofiev at this point, Blake, and are you still holding on to him now?
Yeah, I don't have him anywhere. And honestly, I don't like the even strength deployment. Like Brett Howden and William Karlsson, that's not amazing. Still love the power play one, but obviously they've cooled a little bit there in Vegas. It's just, again, this is a young player. He's not exactly proven at this point. I think he is going to be a real good player in this league for a long time, but there's going to be some ups and downs in this season, and for that reason, like I think he's still a streamer level. Right? Like a good streamer, that's for like a priority streamer, right? Maybe with benefits. Maybe it is a guy you end up holding because he gets back on a heater, right? And, if you look at his season metrics here, like they're pretty damn good. 28th overall in shots and goal per 60 on the year, like despite, shooting 100th overall in shots and goal per 60 in the last 5 games. Like that means he was really cooking, folks. So this is a player that has that in the wheelhouse, and I think he'll probably get back to that. But yeah, it's interesting with Mark Stone out of the lineup there in Vegas. They're a different team. They clearly are. They were flying with Mark Stone out there. And yeah, now they've lost some of that secondary scoring, and it's just the Jack Eichel show, right? You know who they need to prioritize more? Keegan Colasar. Oh, buddy, he did. He's on the line with Tomas Hertl and Nicholas Waugh. Yeah, that's what I call the top line. All right. Any line with Keegan Colasar on it, top line. All right. Who you taking? Pavel Dorofiev or Keegan Colasar? What do you say, Nate? Come on.
Yeah, that's obviously Dorofiev
Oh,
for
God.
me.
All right. You're probably
Uh,
right.
yeah, I like Dorofiev still. I do think there's a real player here. There could be some ups and downs here, and you don't necessarily have to hold him for all of the downs to get the ups, depending on how sharp your league is and those kinds of things. Yeah, that being said, like if he's gonna skate 17 and a half minutes a night, like I'm still pretty into that. Left wing, right wing eligibility, still skated 17 minutes in the last game. Yeah, the current iteration of the Vegas lines I'm not super enthused about, but I think that could change again pretty
Yep.
quickly. Um, yeah, overall, I still think there's a real player here, and I'm not like excited that he's not doing so well at the moment, but the underlying metrics haven't like totally tanked to the point where I'm worried about it just yet. So I still think I'm holding Dorofiev if I possibly can. Last one on the list, Matthias Ekholm, 0 points, his last five, nearly 23 minutes a night. This is a guy who's obviously going to play a ton for Edmonton. Now on an 8-goal, 37-point pace. Can we expect better for Ekholm moving forward, Blake?
I think we can, but it's going to be tough when you're in a head-to-head league, especially this week coming up. Edmonton has 2 games, right, with 0 off nights. So I know we talked about Ekholm in our waiver wire show as a player like we're trying to hold, and it makes sense when you look at the metrics. I'll let you get into that. Like this guy's cooking under the hood. Ekholm is looking good, but that doesn't always equal production, actual production that we need. So yeah, 37-point pace is not what you want to see. I still like what I'm seeing from Edmonton. I feel like they're starting to put it together, and it's only a matter of time before Ekholm starts to kind of produce a little bit, right? And what do we really want from Ekholm? He had 45 points last year in 79 games. If he did that again, that's enough. That's more than enough for me to have Ekholm as a hold all season. He had 11 goals. But yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one. I think I'm holding Ekholm based on what I see, even in a 2-game week. Just because I like this player. He's been doing this for a couple of years now with Edmonton. So I don't know. I don't really want to drop Ekholm. Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I'm definitely not dropping Ekholm personally where I have him. The 23 minutes would be one of the better numbers of his career,
Mhm.
especially of late. Edmonton needs him in a bad way. That defense is not deep behind him. 32% IPP would be the worst of his career going back to, yeah, like well into his Nashville days, 2016, 2017, that range. So that's there. The on ice shooting percentage below 10%. You would expect that to be higher playing for Edmonton. I think it will be. So there's definitely some positive regression markers here with Ekholm. Overall, like I had him projected for 10 goals, 45 points. I still think that's probably about where I would think he should get to for the rest of the season here, at least as a pace moving forward. The underlying metrics actually look really good, even better than I had him projected for. 19th shots per 60, 5th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 18th Corsi, 4 per 60, 6th on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60 over the last 5 on the season. His best number is the on ice scoring chances, 4 per 60 at ninth, and his worst is 18th in individual Corsi, 4 per 60, individual shot attempts for 60. Yeah, all the numbers under the hood look really good for Matthias Ekholm. And yeah, he's maybe not the single most efficient defenseman on the face of the planet, but with that kind of volume, he will get results and probably sooner rather than later. All right, Blake. We need to move along. If we did not talk about a player that you, our dear listener, wanted to hear about, make sure to join for the Monday 8 p.m. EST live stream. I'll be going through all the puzzling players as chosen by the Apples and Geos Discord server. If you're not in the Discord server, get in there. I put out a call usually somewhere around noon or in the afternoon on Monday afternoons, and people can write in their picks for me to talk about, and the ones that get the most votes, I talk about on the live stream. You can also just join the live stream and write in a comment, and I can usually get to most, if not all, of those as well. Now, Blake, we've got to go under the hood, and the player I want to talk about this week is Yegor Sharangovich. Over the last 10 games here, he's 12th in the league in shots per 60, 46th individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, skating 1903. And he's only got 4 goals, 1 assist in there, but he's got 3 points in the last 2 here, and he's got 4 shots and 7 shots in those 2 games. It really does seem to me like he's starting to round into form. And honestly, the uptick in ice time is what's got me the most excited. Last year, the season that he was able to put together last year was one of the more underrated seasons, I think, across the league. But he managed to put that together in 17-18 average time on ice. Now
Yep.
this year, 18-45 on the season. Give me your thoughts on Sharon Govich a little bit here, but everything I'm seeing, he's at least doing what he did last year, if not better. And so far, it feels like to me, he's just been a little bit snake bitten.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great take, and I love what I'm seeing here. I like the line construction too that he's playing with. Like he's playing with Nazem Kadri and Connor Zary. Zary is a player. Like this
Mm-hmm.
guy is really, really skilled. And Kadri, we know what he does. He's a great facilitator, and Sharon Govich is a goal scorer. He's a pure sniper. This guy, amazing. He's definitely snake bit here, right? This is a guy that I think should be a 30-goal perennial 30-goal scorer each year. So, it's the Flames have been a surprise this year too. I'm just digging in on some of their team metrics. Like these guys are 8th overall in Corsi for percentage. They're right up there in scoring chance for percentage over the last 2 weeks. Like, I think that, like I love this segment under the hood because it's really a player that we should be in on that is bubbling that will potentially pop here. Like, look at his shooting percentage, 9.5%. Last year he shot 17.3. It's probably somewhere in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good take. I think, yeah, I mean, the on ice shooting percentage at 4.5%, that's going to double and then some. So that feels like the easiest thing to get behind amongst all of it here. In my preseason take, I had Sharon Govich for 28 goals and 57 points on the season. As with 18 minutes average time on ice, he's getting an extra minute on top of that at the moment. So you can see that would probably take him over the 60-point mark as baseline projection if I'm just keeping my assumptions the same from preseason. And to be honest, I think Calgary's better than I thought they were
Yeah.
preseason. So, yeah, I do see some headroom for this to be a real player. And it's a guy that I think is unrostered in a lot of leagues still currently. So, a guy I wanted to put this out there on. All right, Blake, let's talk about move of the week. Give me what you were able to do this week.
Sure thing, buddy. It ended up working out, but it was a close one. I was up pretty decent in my Cacuffle matchup there, which is a points league, up by 30 going into the weekend. And I had one move left. I decided to try and beef up for next week because it's such a garbage schedule, as we detailed in our waiver wire show. And I used my last move to add Kirby Doc, that legend, that amazing fantasy asset. um, for the Montreal schedule next week. They got 2 off nights. Instead of using that stream for, I could have got a goalie stream in on Saturday or a potential streamer in for Sunday, right? And it was a risk because, it definitely got scary because my opponent had a good Saturday. And then it really came down to Sunday here, which was Utah against Toronto. He had Dylan Gunther and Jack McBain. Let's get silly. And I had Bobby McMahon, the water boy number 2. So it just was really close, but I ended up pulling it out. And yeah, so it's kind of like one of those boom or bust moves, where you're kind of on a razor's edge and you have to make a decision. And I decided to try and get a head start on next week, and I got lucky with that. So it's just a decision of interest, something like that I like to do. If I'm able, right? But yeah, that can definitely blow up in your face. So it was sort of a calculated risk, and it ended up working out for me.
Yeah, I had a similar decision to make in a couple places on whether to look ahead to next week. We did have that Saturday where it felt like you had to make your decision ahead of the Saturday. And as we all know, Saturday being a heavy night, a lot of things can change. If a couple players blow up on a Saturday night for your opponent, the matchup can look a lot different at the end of the night than it did at the beginning. So in one case in particular, like I decided to look ahead to next week, but at the same time, I was able to glean what should have been theoretically a bit of value. So I made a move to pick up Sam Montembeault. Vegas kind of blew him up a bit and ruined the spot there for that start, but Montembeault obviously should get 2, if not 3 starts next week, and it's a league that rewards volume. So that was a spot where I ended up dropping my 4th defenseman, Devin Taves, to get that early Montembeault pick in there.
All
I think
right.
it shores up next week, but I also thought that it would probably slightly improve my point scoring for that night. If you had had a halfway decent night with the point scoring the way it is in that league, it would have been a better pick most likely than Taves for that individual night. So sometimes you can make a move that maybe doesn't change a whole lot for the week, but shouldn't hurt you so much necessarily, and then also get something that really does help you for the following week. So if you are able to kind of get the best of both worlds in that way, sometimes if you're on it early enough, if you're paying attention and you're thinking about next week while you're still trying to win your current matchup, just be aware, and sometimes you can kind of get the best of both worlds in an ideal scenario. All right. Unfortunately, we do have this segment called the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. I say unfortunate because Blake is up 6-1. It still says 5-1 on the slide. That is incorrect. It is 6-1. I did not update it because
How convenient.
apparently, yes, apparently my brain refused to acknowledge the truth that apparently Blake knows every single player that's going to pop off next week. This is like, I don't know, the 20th week in a row where you've picked a guy who goes off for like 20 plus kick-off points in the week. Explain yourself, Blake. How are you doing this?
Well, first off, I'm clipping this. All right. I'm going to listen to this every day when I wake up. I'm just going to put it on my phone. You wake up, you don't doom scroll. I just play Nate saying that I'm an absolute legend when it calls to getting streamers. All right. The fun fact is I don't get a lot of these streamers in my own leagues because obviously we're in a lot of competitive leagues. So yeah, I don't get to enjoy the fruits of my labor, but it doesn't matter. I'm here to help you folks. All right. And also, smash Nate as much as possible. Because this is the only chance I can do that. We just had Nate, I'm surprised he didn't mention, we just played each other in the Experts League, and Nate took it to me. All right. He took the dub. So, shout out to you, Nate. I'll take the death match. You take the actual match, and that's fine. That's sort of where I'm at. But anyways, buddy, I'm excited about this. 6-1. You know what you need to do, Nate? You might need to start streaming some goalies in. What do you think? Like, can you take a goalie in the death match? Would you do that?
I don't think I could do so just based on
Okay.
my, moral intuition around the
Yeah,
subject.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that. All right, I've had enough of talking about the head-to-head streamer deathmatch. Blake, it's your turn. Who are you gonna pick for next week? Who should everybody go out and add instantly because they're an absolute lock to go off this week?
All right, buddy. I got an abs. Yeah, that's how we do it. That's a big lock right here. Jonathan Drouin of the Colorado Avalanche is who I'm going to take. The 20-minute man power play one on Colorado. I think I'm feeling good about that. He's going to do some stuff this week.
Yeah, Druin was definitely one of the two guys that I was looking at. I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I'll go with Yegor
There you go.
Sharangovich, who we just talked about.
Love it.
Yeah, I think that's a player that's worth looking at here. Both of these players obviously get 4 games this week, so we'll both be on even footing there. But yeah, I'm into Yegor Sharangovich, as I mentioned, and hopefully he will be the player to snap the streak here and bring me some semblance of pride back in this house. On that note, that's going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, a terrific free resource.
I've heard that.
Many thanks to the band. They're there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.